Welcome to this session on Art of the Possible process. You may be tuning into this as session 8 on our property strategy course, or you may be coming in just to understand our process, and we will be referring you back to some of the elements of the course to better understand in detail where we're going. We're often approached by faith communities, churches, asking where to start. Very often, they've already started. They've called a couple of people and they found that's not going to help. They need to have a bigger assembly and bring together a number of the elements. If you followed the course along, you may have asked at the end of most sessions, I thought, where do we start? How do we do this? Our belief is that no church board can do this on its own. And the model we're going to go through is what we believe in. It's not the only way to do it, but it's the best way that we've been able to figure out so far. So Dave, tell us, a church is calling us very often. We're going through that first process of a document dump where we're just simply saying, can you drop in some of your budgets, your last couple of years financial reports, anything resembling a building condition report, perhaps a visioning study that you've done maybe even 5-6 years ago. Very often we're looking at older documents and we're beginning to just get a basic understanding of what's going on. Is the roof falling in and you've got literally no money coming in? We have a lot of approaches like that.
Yes.
Or is it possible that you once thought you had a property development, but now you found it didn't look possible? Now, very often we're starting on some kind of situation which it's not exactly crisis, but things are tough. At other times, you've come through a strategic process where you've come looking for help from an organization like ours. And we want to let you know the couple of stages that we go through to help walk you through that journey. So Dave, what's the first stage we go through?
Yeah, the first stage you go through is lifting the lid. And we really believe that listening...
It's exactly that, isn't it?
And it is. It's just opening it, lifting up, seeing what's there. And what we want to do in that phase is really listen to the congregation itself. What is your identity? What are your objectives, priorities? What are the hopes and dreams that you have? We also want to listen to...
Can I just signal that as you said that, a police siren went by, and I think we should just keep rolling because it was so dramatic. So we're listening, just like police. We're listening for the signals and the sirens.
We are.
Yeah.
We also want to listen to the neighborhood. What are the cracks and crevices?
Could be sirens in the neighborhood too.
There could be. There probably are. What are the dreams of the neighborhood in that community? And then we also want to listen to the land itself, meaning the building, but also this land around it. And when we listen to those three environments, we begin to see a hypothesis.
Yes.
These strands, these weaving, kind of bubbling up and emerging.
It's the holy trinity of listening, isn't it?
It is, absolutely.
It starts with all these documents, which is usually where we're starting.
Yep.
It then goes very naturally next to the congregation itself, and then, as you say, Dave, the neighborhood. But it's that neighborhood part that's often the one that congregations in crisis often want to skip past, isn't it? And really we find it's the most important, not only for getting a good idea, but also getting a fundable idea.
Yeah.
And this is a part of our process. We call this or think of it like a rotating or tightening system of pre-development. And for those of you who are property specialists here, you'll hear a lot of what talks about fits into the context of pre-development. Often what we're talking about in the Art of the Possible process is pre-development.
That's right.
Which might sound like, what is God calling us to do? Well, God could beam you a vision of exactly what to do in a dream. That's possible, but it's unlikely. There are many times in the scripture where God's people are told to go and carefully count the cost, to make a plan, to make arrangements and contracts even with people in community. So this is a period of rotating around and coming around, and that listening through there is something which gets us to an idea which is good. And we often ask the question, do you have all the resources you need at your disposal now, including all the money that you might need for whatever it is you're dreaming? And usually the answer is, we know we don't have the money. Our stage of listening then is listening for what are the kind of things that might help you release some kind of funding in the future.
Right.
So listening under lift lid, it's so important.
Yeah, and I think in the listening to the land, a lot of times people may be sitting on a very large land asset and not realize that it could be utilized in more creative and innovative ways. And I think what happens lots of times, we've seen this historically, are people will sell off little chunks one at a time. and we'll sell a little parcel here and sell a little parcel. And next thing you know, you've got nothing left to really imagine
That's it.
what could happen. So we really want to come in and go, what can we best do? Creating an hypothesis that moves us into that next phase.
And let's be really practical. When we say we do listening work, what we mean is we give you an amount of money that needs to be found somewhere to pay for the time for our team members to come and do that listening, often in the form of a retreat.
Retreats or town halls. We're wanting to do some stakeholder interviews and meet with people within the community itself. It looks like a high-level property and building assessment. So we want to do those things so that we can create the best hypothesis possible, because we don't want to go down a path and convince you as a congregation that we're going down a path that we can't actually complete, that we can't fulfill.
So at the end of the lifting the lid stage, we will propose to you a set of listening activities that we think is appropriate for what we see so far based on what you've done already. And we come back with a key hypothesis of saying, this is the best next first way we see going. And here's a possible pathway that could go forward.
Yeah, it's with a recommendation. And we may give 1 to 3 recommendations. You as a community going, what we really believe that this is the pathway in which we want to do. Then that next phase is really going in a deeper dive into the property, into the neighborhood, assuming that, well, obviously we've got to test that hypothesis. Is it going to work?
That in general for us looks like 2 big pathways. They're not the only pathways, but they're the pathways we've covered in the course here. One is property development. There's some kind of new building that will be built on your property. It may be built alongside your existing building or replace it. This is the development option. The other is the community hub option, where there's no new development on your site, but the existing envelope in the existing building is used in more creative ways. It could be only for churches or for churches and charities and nonprofits. It could be you run a restaurant out of your property and the church somehow still gets to stay there as well. But once we have an initial hypothesis, we go into, as you said, Dave, that next phase of exploration.
And I think the third one is and we've seen this actually in multiple cases, where there is a development project and a community hub working seamlessly together.
So in either of these options, the next phase development is something that we will propose back to you within the Art of the Possible process as our next best steps. And depending on whether you're working with an organization like ours, and there are some in other parts of the world, or you're working with us directly, we want to make sure that you understand the cost of those explorations and that we work with you to find a source of funds to pay for them. In some cases, those are monies from your reserves. In other cases, there are community foundations and other granting organizations who may be willing to help you. Mm-hmm. That is often as a function of the partnerships or friendships that you've begun to make. And in our case, an evolving and growing source of funds is our own financing streams, which are dependent on those partnerships. We're looking for the time where a faith community is looking to make friends with those equity-seeking, equity-deserving groups. That's a trigger for us to release some of the funds that we've begun to assemble to do the further work. Now we've moved from pre-development in the lifting the lid to real pre-development, where we're doing the technical studies that are needed. One of the things, Dave, that we talk a lot about on the course is making sure that we're tracking with you as you begin to learn about, let's say, we came in wanting to do deeply affordable or supportive housing.
Right.
And then we understood how much that cost alongside the repair of our heritage building.
Yeah.
It's the case where we don't want you to have gone too far down that housing option before you understood the ramifications on the rest of the way that your faith community will operate.
That's right.
So often the Art of the Possible process is dependent on you, your board, your denomination, as well as the set of ideas that's emerging. And within our process, we try to do, and you will have heard us on the course, talking a lot about the interpersonal relationships that can slow those things down. And our belief is that by doing good preparation work earlier, that mix of understanding what's even physically, legally possible in terms of the planning, the entitlements, the pro formas, all the things we talked about on the course here, as well as where you are going as a community, taking time throughout to weave that process together.
Yeah, and we really want to be, a trusted guide in this process. I want to see, and I think, Ryan, you would agree, we want to see completed projects. Yeah. We want to see the increase of impact. Success looks like you as a congregation meeting those objectives that we've identified in that listening phase. Moving that forward to seeing our communities come together in really innovative ways. And so we want to see completed projects. We want to stay with you, walking alongside you through each step.
Yeah.
And we do have steps and guides that allow us to make sure that we're getting from step A all the way to a completed project.
Here's a question for you, Dave. Is everybody going to love us the whole way through
No.
this kind of a process?
No. Gosh, no. And you know, here's what's really interesting is
Because they love us when they don't
I
have
think-
anybody else to call.
I
right?
think what's beautiful about having the team we do is as soon as they don't love me, I just call up you or Kendra or can you tap out, you go in now.
There's
Because-
the secret to our secret sauce. It's when you decide you don't want to hear from us anymore, we will find another team member to
We'll
sell
find
the
another
exact
team
same
member.
thing, just use a slightly different form of
Yes.
words. Often the thing that we're telling you is the numbers don't add up, or you can't have it all. And
Or get rid of your pews. Oh, sorry, we got to say it one more time.
you would not, you would be amazed at how much time we spend on
gosh.
the question of pews, and the number of people who they hear us talking about the pews coming out and they think, don't worry, we understand they think that now, but once we get a bit further, we'll make sure these people know that only half the pews are coming out. Well, that could be the case, but watch that you end up with 10% of the revenue that we were hoping for. And those are the kinds of things that we spend time going through. So, will you like us throughout the entire process?
No.
It's unlikely. And that's not our desire. Our desire and our objective is to see the best possible community output, kingdom output, financial output, and an overall, we think we did the best we could objective on those
Yes.
finished projects that
Yes.
Dave spoke about. What that means at sometimes is you will always have the choice to sell your property and move on and make friends with another church down the road.
Right.
That choice has been faced far too quickly by
Yes.
many faith congregations around
Yes.
Canada. Our desire is to try to slow that down and make sure that that decision is only come to as the last possible option. But it will never go away off of the table. It's always going to be option number one, isn't it? And as we go through the art of the possible process, our belief is that the conversations you have with that Indigenous group who inspired you to understand the real depth of reconciliation in your local area, with the municipal councillor who said, if only you, church, who've been given perhaps an original gift of colonial land and a tax exemption for all these years, if only you, church, could lean into the area of food security, we would think so much more highly of you, like we used to. If you could hear those things, and the numbers could add up, and we had the right idea, value gets unlocked. One of our other desires and objectives within the art of the possible process is to understand that financial value gets unlocked from the land into the community throughout this process. And we would like you to be aware of when that unlocking happens and to find an equitable way of that value being unlocked to the good of more than just your congregation. This is an area where, if we're back to many of our disclaimers, which if you've been with us on the whole course, you will have heard lots of them. But if you're just here today, our repeat of our disclaimers that we're not lawyers, we're not accountants, we're not architects, we're not developers. We are here as trusted guides for religious communities, faith communities, and congregations facing tough choices about their properties. One of our beliefs is that although on paper and legally from a certain point of view, you may see that this is your parish property, in other ways, it only takes a moment to realize your denomination has played a role. They may have a direct ownership role. Your community has contributed a local tax exemption. They've paid for your sewers and your roads and the access to your power lines that got to you. There is a sense that the community has a sense of ownership in the place that you also steward. And we would like to make sure that no one entity, no one developer or real estate agent or lender is walking away with huge amounts of the financial value that you have in your land. And neither, if we may, do we want to see you be the only beneficiary of what happens. We are here as a registered charity to try to see that benefit be spread more widely. And part of the art of the possible process is to show you that clearly on spreadsheets and help you understand what that is.
Yeah, I think to wrap it up, Graham, I think what's really important is we get back to those crazy bottom lines. The one of transitioning or redeploying these community assets back into the community, back into the neighborhood. We're seeing equity-seeking groups finding home again, finding space where they can belong in. The placemaking, the finding, whether it be affordable housing, whether it be community hubs, whether it be a mixed-use community development, but in that can placemaking emerge in a real tangible way where people feel that they're part of their community, their neighborhood again. And I think if we can do that, we're going to find really creative ways in which we get to be the church. And I think we've done it the wrong way. We're asking, how do we grow the church? I think if we ask the question, how do we become neighborly again? How do we live into the communities in which we're in? I think we'll find a really creative way to be the church.
And there's nothing better to be the church than if we do it that way. Isn't that true, Dave?
I agree.